Richplanet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk, manufacturers of instant protecting you, your family and your home.
Okay, so I think I've made that point fairly clear. So let's jump forward now, 2013, Horsham, the UK. Some guy called Tony Rook is refusing to pay his TV licence because the BBC have covered up facts about 9/11. Now, I'm not casting aspersions against Tony Rook here. I think he's maybe been manipulated. And I also take my hat off to anyone who refuses to pay their TV licence because mainstream media are telling lies. Good on him. But when I saw this article, I became suspicious of it immediately. So this is in the Mail Online. It's a mainstream article, February this year, and it's saying that this guy's not happy about the BBC's coverage of 9/11. And in the article was this image. I'll come to that in a second. This is at the hearing. There was about 100 people there. This is Tony Rook outside with some of the supporters. There were various groups who were helping to gather support for Tony Rook's case. And this is the image of the poster. It's extremely well designed. There's a lot of work gone into this. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, this is a bit fishy. Remember, 11th of September, thermite treason plot. Now, I've read Dr. Judy Wood's book, and I'm pretty convinced that thermite's a red herring, all right? And we've got two little explosions here in the towers suggesting that the towers were disappeared using bombs. So I was a little bit suspicious of this image. It also looks very well orchestrated. It looks as though these two guys who've specifically knelt down in order to stretch the fabric are possibly working in conjunction with the Mail Online photographer. We've got a guy in fancy dress here. This is Tony Rook here, who's refusing to pay his TV licence. Okay, so now at the hearing was this guy. They call this guy Ian Henschel, and he runs Reinvestigate 9/11. And before the hearing took place, he was emailing various members of Reinvestigate 9/11 trying to drum up support for the event. And in the email to people who were going to be at the hearing, he states, at least one mainstream media crew will be present. So Henschel knows the Mail Online is going to be there. But Tony is asking activists not to talk to them and not to hold up placards which do not represent his views. Please go to the bottom to see his message in full. He goes on. Activists attending the hearing are asked to make sure any signs represent the message of this campaign, that the BBC has covered up the truth on 9/11. Those with signs saying anything that would appear speculative to a general audience, e.g. 9/11 was an inside job, will be seen as undermining the court case and Tony's campaign. So Henschel's trying to get people not to bring placards, all right? And then this one appears. So I just assumed this must be the official campaign placard because it's obviously been so well orchestrated. So I wanted to find out who the two guys are kneeling down and who the guy is in fancy dress there. Are they part of this campaign? So I put an appeal out on my TV show to try and find the identities of the people holding up this placard. And my show goes out to around about 20,000 people, and of those people, a lot of them are 9/11 truth well, not activists, but people who don't believe the official story on 9/11. Therefore, it's very likely that they would know someone watching my show would know who these men are who've designed this poster. And I put this appeal out a few months ago. Perhaps I am wrong, and the supporters holding up this poster are genuine 9/11 supporters, but simply victims of the lies put out by the thermite body. In order to find out, I would like to appeal to viewers to help identify the men who are featured in this image. If you recognise any of them, please get in touch via the richplanet.net website. So as I say, it should be quite easy to find them because there's not thousands and thousands of 9/11 truth activists, and I know quite a lot of people who are involved in 9/11 truth. So I only got one email response from that appeal from Tony Rook. Now, he was a bit annoyed that I was suggesting some sort of double cover-up, and he sort of had a bit of a go at me. So I replied to his email. I said, look, Tony, why aren't you, in your evidence that you're submitting to the court, why aren't you mentioning Dr. Judy Wood? This is the only thing you need to submit to the judge. Why are you talking about bombs in the building? And I also said to him, and do you know who those guys were, you're standing next to, holding up the placard? Who were these guys? So Tony Rook replied to me. He said, "I don't know who the did what, used what, to do what on 9/11, but I do know the official story stinks. I am very unpopular with a few 9/11 groups because I will not follow Judy Wood, weapons of whatever, or holograms, faked VT, because I do not care. I have no idea who brought the banner, nor do I know the identity of the man in the Guy Fawkes mask." So he's standing here behind the banner, he doesn't know who these guys are, and he doesn't know who's designed the banner. So I thought, well, maybe Henschel's organised this, the guy who was organising support for the whole event. So I emailed Ian Henschel. I said to him, "Can you tell me who made the poster and who are the people holding it up? Do you know if the people holding up the poster, and in particular the two men kneeling down and the person in the mask, can be contacted?" He replied, "No, I don't know who they are. They asked me what I thought of the poster, and I said personally I did not think a lot of it, but they should ask Tony. I assumed from this picture they had Tony's approval." So I replied to Henschel, "Thanks for letting me know what happened about the placard. I really would like to trace the men holding up the placard. Is it possible you could email your distribution list and ask them if anyone knows who these strangers at the hearing were?" I sent that to Henschel on the 1st of April. He hasn't replied. So it looks like he's not interested in finding out who these guys were. After him telling people not to bring placards, some strangers bring that extremely big placard and he doesn't know who they are. Henschel has written 2 9/11 books, and information about them has appeared in mainstream news. He doesn't mention Dr. Judy Wood, he just points out holes in the official story. In my opinion, this is a psychological operation, folks. What I think is going on here is they've decided to introduce some 9/11 research into the mainstream, because this is Mail Online, remember, this is mainstream newspaper, but they've wanted to introduce information that they can disprove at some point in the future. Thermite. Ian Henschel here, who, as I said, runs Reinvestigate 9/11, said, "Andrew Johnson is personally the biggest single cause of the collapse of the 9/11 truth movement in the UK." And Andrew Johnson has been supporting Dr. Judy Wood's work for years now. So I think it's time.
Bullshit detected. Take precautions.
Henschel's father worked for MI5. His mother also worked for British intelligence. I don't know him, but I know someone who knows him. A reliable source informs me that he's a highly manipulative individual. So, who are these guys? I want to know who they are, and I've been asking every audience that I've been speaking in front of on this tour. Have these two guys just been along to Primark and bought some 9/11 truth clothes for the day? This one's got quite a prominent nose. No one recognised them? Okay, we come on to 7/7, another fake terrorist incident. This man, on the day of 7/7, 2005, the London bombings, went on national television and radio and said that his company, Visor Consultants, were in the process of carrying out a terrorist training exercise at the 3 tube stations where the actual terrorist bombs exploded, and at the same times. That's what he said. Immediately he said that on national radio and television, he should have been arrested. Anyone with half a brain would have to say that. He's saying that his company were at the 3 same tube stations at the same time the actual terrorist bombs went off, and he was organising a terror drill there. He should have been. I'm not saying that Peter Power was in on it. I think he was probably duped, but he should have been arrested. His property should have been seized, his computer should have been seized, and they should have extracted information to find out who really planned that drill, because that would take you to the people who planted the bombs. Okay, but they didn't do that, they let him off. And this is just one smoking gun of the 7/7 evidence. A lot of it pointed out in Dr. Nick Collestrom's book, Behind the Veil of 7/7. But this isn't a lecture about 7/7. You can watch interviews with Dr. Nick Collestrom on my website, and there are many, many holes in the official story which tell you that it was a fake orchestrated event. Okay, and I've been trying to bring awareness of this to MPs. I went to see my MP, and he wasn't aware of any of the holes in the official story. He just completely bought the official government line. Didn't know any of it. Didn't even realise there was campaigns or anything. So I give him some documents, 40 odd pages of key information that MPs should be aware of, and I'm asking people to go on my website, download those documents. So if you click on this link here, I've got a list of all of the MPs, and it tells you which MPs have been given the information. If your MP hasn't, please print out the documents. As I say, it's about 40 odd pages. Book an appointment to go and see your MP and just give them the documents. Now, I've only managed to get, I think it's 7, it's a lot more now, it's maybe approaching 100 MPs have had this information, and I have been getting letters back from them, and some of them just show complete pathological denial. What it seems to me is they're seeing the information, they're not really studying it, and they're making a political decision. They're saying to themselves, whoa, if I go down this avenue, I'm going to be out of a job, right? So they're just making a political decision. None of them have got any balls. None of them actually want to see the truth. But the first phase, if you like, of my campaign is to get all of the MPs those documents, because if they've been given the documents at some future point in time, when the truth does come out, then they can't claim ignorance. That's what I want to do. So once we've got all of the MPs that information, it might come to light that some of them are a bit more sympathetic to it than others, and then we can take it on to another phase. That's my logic behind it. So do help out and do go on the website and see if your MP hasn't had the documents. Okay, so what will it take to bring about real change in our media and get some truth about these subjects, some truth about 7/7 or 9/11 or any of the other things that they're lying about? Now, when I started making my TV show, I was a little bit naive. I would get someone on the show that would not be allowed on mainstream, and I would think to myself, wow, that was good evidence. That's going to go much further than Richplanet. That's going to end up somewhere big. Nothing would happen. Then I'd get someone else on the show with what I considered, better information. Would go nowhere. And it would happen again. Now, I've actually come to the conclusion that I could have George Bush sitting on my sofa, right, saying 9/11 was an inside job, and it wouldn't even get in the mainstream. They seem to have this barrier. If we just call this the independent media, which is what I'm involved with, I call it independent media, not alternative media. They've got this barrier that nothing is allowed in. Mainstream media would be BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky, and all of your main newspapers. So what does it take to get information from the independent media, from independent researchers, into the mainstream? It's extremely difficult, but it does occur on limited occasions. It occurs if the story is a psychological operation or contrived from the outset. So they'll plant a story in alternative media, independent media, knowing that they're going to take it on. And this is what happened with the Horsham thing that I've just explained. Another example was, anyone remember the G4S scandal? They were saying, oh, the Olympics aren't secure enough because G4S are crap. Remember that? I didn't buy any of that rubbish. If you think about the Olympics for a moment. You've got dozens and dozens of venues, you've got thousands and thousands of competitors. Each of those competitors from every country in the world have got accommodation, right? You've got millions of spectators. How could you possibly militarily make such an event secure like that? It's like saying, I don't think Christmas is going to be very secure this year. A bit worried about Christmas. We need more security for Christmas. Do you see where I'm coming from? It's just preposterous to think that you could make that secure. So that broke in the independent media. I think it was on the Tony Gosling show, and then it got into mainstream media. So why would they do that? Well, maybe they were planning a contrived fake event and they were just preparing everyone's mind to accept it with this G4S bogus story. Another example where information gets from independent media into the mainstream is if the information's been used for the purposes of ridicule. So we saw this with conspiracy files. So they'll cherry pick information from 7/7 Ripple Effect and other documentaries purely to ridicule it. Now, a good example of a story which didn't get into mainstream, which should have, was on Theo Chalmers' show a couple of years back. This broke in the alternative media. I think it's been on Press TV. David Cameron in 1989, when he was a junior researcher for the Conservative Party, he went to South Africa on behalf of a British company which involved various high-ranking Conservatives using taxpayers' money to purchase 3 nuclear weapons, because the South African government were going through a change at that time, and they didn't want to leave these weapons in the hands of the black government that were going to take over. So he was involved in a sale of those weapons. They ended up in Oman, and they went missing. Dr. David Kelly was also involved in this transaction. So David Cameron was responsible for 3 nuclear weapons going missing. Now, an act was passed in 1998 which states that anyone involved in an arms deal where either a weapon is tested or let off would get a life sentence. So this is a story which potentially in the future could get David Cameron a life sentence because he was involved in this dodgy arms deal, and money was siphoned off to the Conservative Party in this deal. It didn't even get in any mainstream publication. There was an example last year that I spoke about, the Tariq al-Hashimi story. This is the Deputy Prime Minister of Iraq, who was going around Iraq a couple of years back with a murder squad, murdering people in the Iraqi government. He murdered people in the Iraqi army, Iraqi police, foreign ministers. So he's murdering all these people, and then he fled to Turkey. So that's like Nick Clegg going around the UK with a murder squad, killing people in the government. And it didn't even get on the news. So they've kept that out of the mainstream because they don't want people. Well, the story that they're selling is that this is all of the murders in Iraq is carried out by Al Qaeda or extremists or insurgents or whatever word you want to choose. They don't want people to know that the Iraqi government, which was installed by the West, is carrying out such atrocities. So they've got completely tight control over the mainstream media. They can, as I said at the very beginning, they're extremely confident that they've got control over people's minds.
Richplanet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk. InstaShield for your quick, simple home protection.